You're finished. I'm calling the board. I'm calling the police. You're done, old man. That was the soundtrack of my morning. HOA President Eleanor Karen Price, screeching at the top of her lungs in the middle of our street like a kettle that someone forgot on the stove. What had her in such a twist? Her precious black Porsche 911, now up on jack stands, wheels stacked by my garage, mirrors wrapped up safe, windshield resting gentle against my mailbox, not a scratch on any of it, just taken apart, neat as a Swiss watch laid out on velvet. And there she was, stomping and flailing like Godzilla in yoga pants, while every neighbor for 3 houses down sipped their coffee and pretended not to be grinning. Me? I leaned on my porch rail, gave her my best "how do you do" nod, and called out, "Morning, Eleanor. Looks like your parking privileges expired." And right then, that was the moment all of this, every petty showdown and eye roll and clattering argument, every neighbor's secret wish for justice, it all came together. But you're probably wondering, how'd we get from Eleanor blocking my driveway every morning to her Porsche lying in pieces, all within the law and not a single part harmed? Stick around, friend, because this one's a wild ride. Before we go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is over there. And if you've ever wanted to see an HOA tyrant get a taste of their own medicine, hit subscribe, because stories like this, they're not as rare as you think. See, there are 2 kinds of people in neighborhoods like mine. There are the quiet ones, the folks who just want to keep their lawns tidy, watch their grandkids, mind their business, and maybe wave hello now and then. And then you got the ones with a clipboard, a title, and a God complex. Eleanor was Exhibit A. She didn't just become HOA president. She became the HOA. But it wasn't always that way, not back when my late wife Marlene and I moved to Oak Ridge Estates 20 years ago. She loved those old oaks, the way their branches tangled together over the street, making a tunnel of shade. She'd listen to the birds and tell me it sounded like they were arguing about whose turn it was to do the dishes. We picked a little brick house, single story, with white trim and a driveway Marlene made me pave with stone because, in her words, asphalt looks sad, Marcus. I kept it up after she was gone. The roses she planted by the mailbox, the old bird bath we dragged home from a flea market, and that driveway, which was the last project we ever did together. To anyone else, it was just a patch of stones. To me, it was sacred. That was home. And when someone disrespected that space, well, let's just say I took it personal. For most of my time there, the HOA was nothing but harmless busybodies, retirees who wanted the neighborhood to look nice. Then Eleanor happened. I'll never forget the first time I saw her, stepping out of a black Porsche like she'd just parked for a photo shoot, sunglasses you could land helicopter on, heels clicking down the sidewalk, blazer starched enough to deflect small arms fire. She talked like every sentence was a memo to a Fortune 500 board. Never mind, our board was 37 houses and a park bench with a broken slat. At first, I figured she'd flame out quick. Folks like her usually do. But I was wrong. It started with a letter, HOA letterhead, taped to my door like a white flag. I've been working on a '67 Chevy truck in my garage, half pulled out to give myself room. Still on my own driveway, not blocking a thing. But that was enough for Eleanor. You are in violation of HOA Rule 14b, no unsightly automotive work visible from the street. Unsightly. That truck was pristine. But I shrugged it off. People like her gotta feel important. Then more letters came. Recycling bin visible from a street? Warning. Shutters faded approximately 6%. Paint them or else. Grass inconsistent height pattern. Threat of fines. If you think I'm exaggerating. Well, I wish I was. Still, I stayed polite. That's my way. She was a nuisance, but she wasn't making it personal. Until one August Tuesday morning. Sun just breaking, gold light, the whole world soft and quiet. Until I saw it. Her Porsche, parked dead in front of my house. Not her curb, not a guest spot, not even in front of her own house. No, she pulled up right in front of my driveway. Not blocked, but close enough that getting out meant a 3-point turn that'd make a stunt driver sweat. I figured maybe it was a delivery or something, but no, her own driveway was empty, guest parking wide open. I walked over, knocked polite as can be. She opened the door in some athleisure getup that probably cost more than my truck, holding a smoothie the color of nuclear waste. Yes, she asked, bored out of her mind. I explained the issue, asked her to move her car back a few feet. She shrugged. That's common area parking. Perfectly legal. I said, not illegal, just inconvenient. She shrugged again. You'll manage, and slammed the door. I let it go. Once isn't a pattern. Maybe she had a bad day. But next morning, there was again. And again. After 3 days, I knocked, hoping for civility. This time, her voice came through the intercom. It's legal parking, Marcus. Don't bother me with this again. That's when I realized this wasn't an accident. It was a message. She wanted to show me she was in charge, that she could inconvenience me anytime she pleased. A turf war, HOA style. Now, I might be old, but I'm not weak. And I'm sure as hell not someone you shove around on his own front lawn, especially not where Marlene's roses are blooming. Something inside me shifted. Not anger, something colder, sharper. If Eleanor wanted a battle, I'd give her one. But not with shouting, not with intimidation, not with the board. With patience, tools, and a bit of old-fashioned logic. Every morning, her Porsche showed up, gleaming, smug, like a cat on a neighbor's car hood. Day 4, I left a polite note. Morning. Please avoid parking directly in front of my driveway. Thank you. Next day, I found my note crumpled in my mailbox, spitball style. After that, I stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding. Neighbors started noticing. Old Mr. Patterson, 2 doors down, muttered, "Woman's got no shame. She fined me for my garbage can facing the wrong way." Mrs. Klein whispered, "She's been bullying folks since day 1. Nobody wanted to speak up. She knew every rule, twisted them like pretzels. Without meaning to, I'd become the neighborhood's last hope." One morning, after nearly clipping her car just to leave for work, I decided I was done. Knocked again. She opened up just enough to scowl at me. "You're blocking my driveway again," I said. "That's common property." "You're being dramatic," she replied. Then she wrinkled her nose, pointed to my old truck. "That project you rolled out last week? It's an eyesore. I assumed you didn't care about curb appeal. That truck was my wife's favorite." I bit my tongue. "Are you going to move your car or not?" She grinned, said no. "I don't think I will," and closed the door. That was the day I called the police. Officer showed up, young guy, clearly wishing he was somewhere else. "Because her car isn't technically blocking your driveway, sir, we can't ticket her." "So she's not doing anything wrong?" I asked. "She's being inconsiderate," he said, "but legally it's an HOA issue." He talked to Eleanor. She went full sweet and innocent mode. When the officer left, she shot me a little victorious smirk and parked even closer the next day. I took it to the board. Eleanor beat me to the punch. Already at the clubhouse, papers in hand. "Property violations at the Jones residence," she announced, reading off my so-called offenses. Truck outside, recycling bin visible, shutters fading. I tried to bring up her parking. "That's legal," she said. "He's blowing it out of proportion." Some board members nodded. Others looked uneasy. Mr. Patterson spoke up. "I see your car there every day. It's out of hand." Eleanor glared. He went silent. I left feeling helpless. Not because I couldn't fight, but because she wasn't playing fair. She was weaponizing the rules. But the thing about people who think they're untouchable, they always underestimate the quiet ones. I've rebuilt engines from bolts and rust. I know how to take something apart so thoroughly that when you look at it, you forget what it used to be. So the next morning, when her Porsche showed up again, shining and smug, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. She was playing checkers. I was about to play chess. For a week, I documented everything. Photos, videos, times, distances, every angle. Neighbors whispered, "Get her, Marcus." I didn't want a cheering squad. I wanted evidence. Even tried calling tow trucks again. One refused outright. Another hung up. Third guy said he'd try. But as soon as he saw Eleanor's meltdown, he bailed. "She's too much trouble, sir." Eleanor smirked, told me I'd never win. She was right. Not played her game, I wouldn't. But I had another idea. That night, I pulled out every HOA rulebook, city code, and state law I could find. Hours of reading, highlighting, cross-referencing. Then I found it. City ordinance on repeated obstruction, state law on nuisance vehicles, HOA rule against harassment. and a clause saying the property owner could remove or abate a nuisance with no method specified. Give a mechanic a vague rule, and you hand him the keys to the kingdom. After days of research, I wrote the world's most boring but effective letter. Legal citations, rules, the works. Sent 1 copy certified mail, kept one in my binder. Friday, she signed for it with a flick of her wrist. Monday at 7:23 a.m., Eleanor parked half an inch closer to my driveway than ever. Stared at my window, smirked, walked off. I smiled back. Not the smile of victory, the smile of a man who's been given exactly the opportunity he was waiting for. I waited till everyone was asleep. 2:14 a.m. Neighborhood silent but for the cicadas. Roll my toolbox out, my floor jack, my lights. I wasn't about to destroy anything. I was about to create a lesson she'd never forget. Up went the Porsche on jack stands. Off came the wheels, each one laid out on pads. Battery? Out. Mirrors, removed with the right tool, no scratches. Wipers, spoiler bolts, non-essential panels, all stacked neatly. The windshield was the real art. Heated, cut with a flexible blade, suction cups, out in one piece. Took my time. No hurry. When I was done, the Porsche looked like it was waiting for a magician to put it back together. Not damaged, just unassembled. Every part accounted for. At dawn, Eleanor strutted out in her robe, coffee in hand. Saw her car, froze like someone had paused her with a remote control. Then she let out a screech, so piercing I think a flock of birds changed their migration path. "Oh my God, what did you do to my car?" she howled. Neighbors came out, some filming, some grinning behind their mugs. I took a sip of coffee, said, "Morning, Eleanor. Seems you're missing a few parts. You're welcome to pick them up." She went nuclear. Called the board, the police, threatened lawsuits. The same 2 officers showed up. They took one look, tried not to laugh, read my binder and the certified letter, checked every photo. "Ma'am," the officer said, "Mr. Jones issued warnings, followed procedure, and removed parts without damage. This is a civil matter, not a crime." Eleanor shook with rage. "You can't be serious," she screamed. "He dismantled my Porsche." "Very neatly," the officer replied, deadpan. Neighbors snorted. It was the first time I'd ever seen her completely powerless, screaming at the law with half the neighborhood watching and the police on my side. Karma has a funny way of showing up, sometimes in a badge, sometimes in jack stands. She tried to sue me for $500,000. Claimed emotional distress, defamation, deprivation of HOA duties. My lawyer, Lydia, leafed through my binder, grinned, and said, "We're not just going to win, Mr. Jones. We're going to bury her." Turns out, all the things Eleanor thought she could hide, waiving her own fines, spending HOA money on herself, bending the rules, came tumbling out. Board members panicked. Emergency meeting. Residents demanded her resignation. The vote was unanimous. Gone, banned from issuing citations, forced to post a public apology for 30 days on the HOA page. Her apology became the most screenshot post in our neighborhood's history. Eleanor left Oak Ridge 3 months later. Her house sat empty like it was grateful for the break. The new owners? Friendly, normal, asked for gardening tips, brought cookies, waved from the porch. But here's the thing. You'd think that after losing everything, after being humiliated and forced out, Eleanor would have learned. Some people never do. She tried to get her Porsche reassembled at the dealership, refused to pay, and the repo truck hauled it off. When she left, she didn't say goodbye, just climbed in the back seat of an SUV and disappeared, like the last stubborn leaf finally letting go. And just like that, peace returned. Kids playing in the street, neighbors chatting, folks helping each other without worrying about getting fined for unsightly activity. The air felt lighter. The birds sang louder. People told me. Didn't know I'd been holding my breath for years until now. And honestly, me too. Sometimes I sit on my porch in the morning, coffee in hand, watching the sun hit those old stone pavers. And I think, was it all worth it? The arguments, the sleepless nights, the binders full of evidence, the moonlit Porsche surgery? Then I hear my wife's voice in my head. Clean lines, Marcus. Everything in its place. That's peace. And I know, yeah, it was worth it. Not for revenge, Not for pride, not for the Porsche, but for respect, for boundaries, for home. Because when someone tramples your peace, sometimes you have to stand up calmly, methodically, legally, and teach them the difference between power and responsibility. The new neighbors planted red roses last week, just like Marlene used to. One of the kids next door asked if she could help wash my truck. I handed her a sponge and a bucket, and she beamed like she'd been given the keys to the city. That's what makes a neighborhood. Not rules, not citations, but kindness, connection, respect. Most mornings now, it's just me, my coffee, the rising sun, and an empty, peaceful driveway. If there's one thing this whole saga taught me, it's that karma isn't loud or quick. It's patient, precise, and sometimes very, very satisfying. Bullies, tyrants, the Eleanor Prices of the world, they count on people being too tired or too polite to push back. But when you stand your ground, calmly, with the facts, with a wrench if you have to, you find out they were never as strong as they seemed. So protect your peace. Protect your home. And never let someone walk over you just because they think they can outshout you. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with a Karen, an HOA dictator, or a neighbor who pushed you too far? Drop your story below. I read every comment. And if you love seeing justice served with a side of humor, hit subscribe for more tales just like this one. Let's talk about it. Where's the line between enforcing rules and abusing power? What would you have done? Would you have gone further or let it slide? I'll be here, coffee in hand, ready to read what you think.